Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. We are back here today as Purdue turns the calendar over to October when they head to Minneapolis to take on the 4-0 Golden Gophers on Saturday. I'll have some final thoughts here from the first month of the football season before an in-depth preview of Minnesota and what you can expect from the Golden Gophers on Saturday. Then, as always on the midweek show, your questions will be answered. I always appreciate those of you who send those over. Thank you so much to those who participate. Plenty to get to today, so let's hop in. First, if you don't already, be sure, follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. Couple of away games coming up, always tweeting plenty, giving plenty of commentary on there during games, so you'll want to follow there. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, currently coming to you twice a week. And we'll have to see how things go during basketball season, but I think this could be something we keep going then as well. So be sure to subscribe. Lots of stuff coming your way that you won't want to miss. To get into things today, I wanted to put a ribbon here on the final, the end of September. Purdue will take the field on October 1st on Saturday. One of the crazy things about college football is just simply how fast the season goes by. It's really a sport. It is a 12-month sport. You look at the current calendar now, and the regular season ends, and you have coaching moves. You have the early signing day in December. Then you have bowl games, then normal signing period, spring ball, transfer portal. It never ends. But when you actually get into the playing portion of the season, you got 13 weeks to play 12 games, and we're already a third of the way into the season for Purdue. No doubt, the first month was underwhelming. Expectations were plenty high coming into this season for Purdue. I think to some degree, they may have been a little unrealistic, though we do sit here right now and we can see how close Purdue is or could be to a whole different reality, a much better record than the 2-2 they sit at. Injuries haven't helped, and we'll get to those injuries in a minute, but one big issue here is that Purdue just seems to have a lack of playmakers. Charlie Jones, no doubt, has emerged as the offense's big play threat, but outside of him, no one else has really emerged at receiver. In fact, we haven't seen a whole lot from anyone else. TJ Sheffield's had some nice moments. Mershawn Rice did in the first game. A little bit of Deion Burks at Syracuse, but really not much at all. Purdue had to replace one of the best pass rushers in school history. That hasn't really happened so far. You haven't had big play guys on defense, really. Chris Jefferson, sure, pick six, another interception, a nice return. But as a whole, the playmaking just isn't there on this team. So that's been a tough area for Purdue so far. The team is deeper than what we've seen from most of Brahms' teams. You look at the toll the injuries have taken, and outside a quarterback, it hasn't really depleted you to this point, and you've had some real significant ones, but just you have that depth. But when you don't have that elite talent at the top, it really makes for a narrow margin for error, and that's bitten Purdue twice already. That margin for error just got flirted with enough in both the Penn State game and the Syracuse game that it came back and bit Purdue. Now, you can't talk about the start of Purdue's season without talking about the injuries. Garrett Miller and DeMar J. Lewis were out for the year, I think before the first scrimmage of fall camp. And if not, it was right after it because it was in the second week. That's a big blow. We've certainly seen that Garrett Miller impact in the tight end room right now because We're hardly seeing Paul Paferi. That's a big area of concern. Payne Durham has to stay healthy there. DeMar J. Lewis would have been a nice bolster to the defensive line that's looking to make plays. We've only seen Brock Thompson and Jalen Graham in one game. We've only seen King Daru and Samisi Fakasieki in 2 games, I believe. Aiden O'Connell, Reese Taylor, they both missed the last game. No T. Denson, the cornerback transfer from Kansas State. No Abdur Rahman Yassin. He's still recovering from a knee injury, I believe. So that's a lot of names. And when you look at names like Thompson, Graham, Daru, O'Connell, Taylor, Miller, boy, those are some big ones. Those are some really big ones. If you'd asked me before the season, who are the 2 guys that cannot get hurt, I'd have told you Aiden O'Connell and Jalen Graham. And here we are a month into the season, and both are currently injured. It's bad luck. There's nothing you can do. That's just part of football. But injury luck has not favored Purdue so far. And of course, the missed opportunities. My goodness, do those hurt. Purdue's 2-2, but they're so close to something a lot better. On the flip side, they're also close to something worse. They very well could have lost that game to Florida Atlantic on Saturday, but they didn't. You look at that game at Syracuse, that's the killer. Yes, Purdue could have beaten Penn State, and I'll tell you what, the Nittany Lions suddenly look like one of the better teams in the country. But that Syracuse game is the one you really look at that got away. You had the pick 6 that was brutal. But other than that, and, that's self-inflicted as well, but the stuff after the play, the stuff outside of the play is what got you beat there. And that just isn't acceptable. It hurts. Expectations were high. Enthusiasm was high. And then, of course, you see what happens, after the game Saturday where enthusiasm was really low. And that's not a fun place to be for a program that's really relied on the build of momentum over the past 5+ years. You're dealing with a 2-2 record now. You have plenty of injury questions ahead of you. And you're entering what's about to be a really tough month. That really tough month begins on Saturday as Purdue heads to Minnesota, a noon Eastern kick on ESPN2. Look, there's no sugarcoating it. Purdue has lost 4 in a row in this series. The last win was back in 2017. Purdue came out of a rain delay. Jawan Bentley had a pick 6 to seal the deal. But ever since then, it hasn't been great for the Boilermakers here. It's an interesting little divisional matchup here because Jeff Brom and PJ Fleck were hired at the same time in the same coaching cycle back in December of 2016. So you can always compare the coaches pretty validly based off of what they've done. Now, PJ Fleck certainly inherited a better situation, certainly a different situation with why Tracy Claeys was fired compared to why Darrell Hazel was fired, but nonetheless, it's a fair comparison to make. Golden Gophers are off to a great start. They're 4-0 this season. They just won their Big Ten opener 34-7 up in East Lansing against the Spartans last week. Look, I know they played a very light non-conference slate. They also absolutely dominated everybody that was on it. 38-0 win over New Mexico State, 62-10 over Western Illinois, 49-7 over Colorado. Puts them at 4-0. And as you look at this group, it's fascinating. Tanner Morgan, the quarterback there, will be making his 5th career start against Purdue. He's not some downfield, deep shot passer, but he is very effective in the offense that they run. And he's more effective this year because back is the offensive coordinator, Kirk Shiraka, who engineered that offense back in 2019. Minnesota went 11-2 that year. Morgan threw for 3,200 yards, 30 touchdowns to 7 picks. He was really good that year, and as you look at his start to this year, he's hitting 77% of his passes, 7 touchdowns to just 1 pick. Of course, again, the competition level has not been all that high. Some of those teams they've played, the 3 non-conferences are bad. Colorado's the worst team in the Power 5, and I don't know that it's close. Michigan State's pass defense is abysmal. Purdue fans remember that. But you can only judge Morgan based off of what he's done and who he's played to this point, and he's been really good. Of course, he's a threat to run. They're more than happy to run RPO concepts to really utilize him there. 3 rushing touchdowns on the season so far for Tanner Morgan. He's not a guy that you're going to look at and worry about the same way that, last year you did with C.J. Stroud or Hendon Hooker. But you have to respect what Tanner Morgan is capable of doing within that system. And he's a guy, when you're that veteran, you don't really play outside of the system much. He's rock solid there. And he's so rock solid because he has a very good running back, Muhammad Ibrahim, back from injury. He leads them in rushing, missed all of last season for the most part. He got hurt in the season opener. He was off to a heck of a start against Ohio State in that Thursday night game on Fox and then got hurt late. But he's very experienced. He's a 6th-year guy as well. Had over 150 yards against Purdue back in 2018. Had over 100 back in 2020. So he's done well against Purdue in the past. And so far this year, he's been unreal. 141 yards per game. I think he's over 6 or 7 yards per carry. 8 touchdowns on the year. And look, he's your number 1 priority. He is the first guy listed on that scouting report. Now, slowing him down is easier said than done. However, Purdue has done a nice job against opposing running backs this season. You look at the last 2 weeks where Sean Tucker is a very good running back at Syracuse. Purdue really limited him. Larry McCammon at FAU, he's their number 1 guy who they wanted to get going, and he really didn't. The flip side of that, the quarterback run game was very effective for both Syracuse and FAU. You kind of look at that, it makes sense with how much man coverage Purdue has been playing this year. That's a big change from what Purdue did last year. But at the same time, you don't have a guy like Jalen Alexander and you don't have Jalen Graham out there to really be effective in spying the quarterback. So a little bit of a double-edged sword there, but nonetheless, Purdue has to be better at stopping the quarterback or at least containing him in the run game this week, because if you really just sell out on stopping Ibrahim, Morgan will get you. And if you don't stop Ibrahim, he'll run all over you, as will the guy who comes in to spell him, Trey Potts. He's their number 2 back, but he's averaging over 70 yards per carry. 70 yards per game, not 70 yards per carry. From Minnesota's point of view, though, they'll run it every single play if they can. They'll make Purdue stop them. You look at last year, it was in the rain, but Potts still had a nice game. And he got hurt late in the game, but he was really good. This is a run-heavy offense that Purdue is going to have to be really disciplined against. It's a time of possession heavy offense. Last week against Michigan State, they had the ball for 42 minutes and 29 seconds. It's almost impossible to not play well when you're doing that. Your defense is so rested when they get out on the field, and your offense is just abusing that other team's defense. And that's what they did. That's what they've done all season long. That's what that offense is designed to do. Again, all of these stats can be a bit skewed because the competition's not great. And even with Michigan State, I don't know how good they are, but after the last 2 weeks, they sure don't look real good. Minnesota comes in averaging 6 points a game. Opponents are under 200 yards per game of offense. Michigan State just had 240. That was it. And what's funny is it's not a turnover-heavy defense. They forced 6 in 4 games, 6 turnovers in 4 games. But they get the job done. They get the defense out there. They get the punter out there. And they get the ball back in their offense's hand, and they take a lot of time off the clock. Really good run defense, facing a really bad run offense for Purdue. That's a pretty big area of concern. I saw this stat looking at their special teams. In 4 games, Minnesota's only punted a total of 3 times. They didn't punt last week against Michigan State. That's pretty crazy. That shows how efficient that offense has been. Almost every kickoff of theirs has ended in a touchback. So I don't know that you look at special teams as an area where Purdue's going to really create some huge play this week. Time to get into the injury report, and of course this week is a huge one. Jeff Brom had his Monday morning press conference. Didn't give us much, but what he did say is that he would have to see later in the week about Aiden O'Connell, King Doru, Reese Taylor, and Jalen Graham. Those are all very important guys if you're Purdue. We know how important Aiden O'Connell is. We will see there. He did say that Brock Thompson and Cam Craig were doubtful for this week. We saw last week Daniel Johnson slide in at right tackle in Cam Craig's absence. Did a nice job. I think we will see that again. We also learned that Kyron Douglas and Mitchell Finneran have not been playing at 100%. So that may explain a little bit of Mitchell Finneran's struggles. Who knows? But that was interesting to hear as well. So we will certainly be keeping an eye on injuries closer to kickoff. I'm recording this on Tuesday night. So tomorrow night, Wednesday night, Jeff Brom will do his radio show. I don't know that we'll get anything then. He meets with the media Thursday evening as well after practice. What he says then, who knows? But all eyes are going to be on Aiden O'Connell, and he's number 1 on my 3 keys for this game because, to be honest with you, it's almost impossible for me to see a situation where Purdue is in this game late in the 4th quarter without Aiden O'Connell. Just the drop-off from him to the rest of the quarterbacks on this roster. As I said last week, in the post-game podcast, yes, that says a lot about Aiden O'Connell, but that also says a lot about what's behind him. And however you want to split that assignment or credit, you do that however you so choose. But that's a concern in terms of where the program is right now. On the positive side, if O'Connell plays, he has the capability to almost be the great equalizer of sorts. He can make those plays down the field. He can make something out of nothing sometimes. Purdue got off to a really nice start against them last year, and that was mostly because of O'Connell. Had a nice touchdown to Milton Wright, and then the rain came in the second half, and things really fell apart. So it can be done, but it's going to take Aiden O'Connell on the field and slinging the ball down the field to have a chance for Purdue. Number 2, I think you need to force multiple turnovers in this game. And really that comes down to the time of possession issue. I think no matter what, Minnesota wins the time of possession battle. Purdue doesn't play a style that's really conducive to winning that, but your defense can't be on the field for 40 to 45 minutes. That just can't happen. But what can happen? You can force some early turnovers, especially early in drives. Give yourself a short field. Force a fumble. Pick off a pass. You get a short field, you put a touchdown on the board, you flip the momentum and you get Minnesota out of rhythm. And that's what you have to do. If you let them get into a rhythm, they are going to eat your defense alive. But if you get them off script, get them off balance, then yeah, you may be able to have some success here. And then number 3, explosive plays are going to be critical. This Minnesota team has not been challenged vertically much at all this season. You look at the quarterbacks they've played. New Mexico State's quarterback situation is really bad. They've played like 3 or 4 guys already this year. Western Illinois is not a very good FCS team. We've talked about Colorado. They're the worst team in the Power 5. Their quarterback situation is an utter train wreck. And I don't think Peyton Thorne at Michigan State was worth any of the hype that he got over the summer. So if you have O'Connell, you take shots early. You take shots often. You see what you can do to take the top off of that Minnesota defense. And if you do, again, you take them off their script. You rattle them a little bit. You see what you can do. If you can't do that, and if you're not creating big plays, it could be a pretty long afternoon up in the Twin Cities. As it comes to a prediction for this game, I think it's really hard to predict not knowing whether O'Connell's going to play or not, so I'll give you 2. If Aiden O'Connell plays, I'll give you Minnesota 35, Purdue 28. I think Minnesota is the best team in the West right now. I think they look like it. I know there's the argument that who have they played, but they've dominated who they've played so far. And they have experience. They're well coached. As much as PJ Fleck can really rub people the wrong way, he does a nice job. So I think going on the road against a team that I think is better than Purdue, I'll go 35-28 if Aiden O'Connell is under center for Purdue. Without him, I know this doesn't add up when you look at what would happen to the gambling lines, but I'll go 38-17 Minnesota. I just have very, very big concerns about Purdue's offense without Aiden O'Connell. I think we saw close to what the ceiling is last week, and Minnesota's a much better team. Defensively, Purdue has showed some real flaws. I think it's really going to get exposed here. I think they're going to run Tanner Morgan like crazy at Purdue. Purdue's been leaky in coverage as well. The secondary has really struggled the last couple weeks at times. I think they're going to find some times to take shots at Purdue's secondary. And that's an area where Purdue's been prone to give up big plays. The tackling has to be better. It's a physical Minnesota team. Purdue hasn't shown that it can match that level of physicality to this point. If O'Connell doesn't play, I think this one gets out of hand pretty quickly. If he does play, I think Purdue has this one as a ball game going to the fourth quarter with a chance to win it. So as time gets closer to kickoff and maybe we have an idea on Aiden O'Connell's status, I'll be able to give you a better prediction. But for now, you're stuck with the 2 separate ones as we await news. All right, hopping into the Q&A session. As I said, we'll do these every week in the midweek episode during the season. I enjoy doing it. They're a lot of fun. Love answering your questions. And the first one is very interesting from a longtime listener who wanted to know, do I think Michael Lamo would be better to run this offense than Austin Burton, given his stronger passing ability, or does the combination of Burton's experience and legs give Purdue a better chance to win? I think this is an awesome question because it's one that I have to look at and say I'm not sure. I'm not close enough to the program, physically. I don't get to see practice. I don't know what Michael Alamo looks like on a daily basis. And I don't know what Austin Burton does either. I think I have a better idea of Austin Burton than I do Michael Alamo, but I don't know what all goes on there. You know the reputation of Alamo at this point is that he has a strong arm. He's not afraid to fire it downfield, but there's a lot more to playing quarterback at the Big Ten level than just arm strength. And, is Alamo someone you can put out there who you think can hit short to intermediate passes consistently? I don't know. I don't see that. And I know Michael Alamo's a little bit more mobile. Is he mobile to the point of Burton? I don't really know. We've only seen him against Indiana State, against FAU for 3 plays, and in the spring game when the quarterback isn't going to be running. So it's hard to say. Now, is it reasonable to think that the ceiling would be higher with Alamo? Yes, it absolutely is reasonable to think that. Because as I said, I think last week what we saw with Austin Burton is probably right around the ceiling for this offense with him. There's a certain degree of game management that you're comfortable with that Austin Burton brings to the table. But if that gets off script, if 1st and 10 turns into 1st and 20, or 2nd and 6 turns into 2nd and 16, you're in real trouble there. That's probably going to end up a punt. So, a long answer short here. I don't know that I have the answer. I just haven't seen enough from Alamo to definitively say that he gives Purdue a better chance to win. But I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that question. It's a good one, and I wish that I was around the program more and could give you a better answer. Another one here. Who are some young players making an impact for Purdue? Young is always relative. Looking at, just some guys who are younger. Dylan Downing's in his 2nd year with the program. He's a redshirt sophomore. Him and Devin Maccabee, who's a redshirt freshman, they've carried Purdue at running back for the last 2 games. So you've seen a lot of them. On the offensive line, Marcus Bowe has been starting at right guard all year. He's a redshirt freshman, as is Mohamed Musa, who has seen some time both at left tackle and right tackle. He's kind of that 6th guy there that they bring in and use interchangeably. And then on defense, Nick Carraway and Mo Amanade are true freshmen who have seen some snaps on the defensive line. As a whole, though, this is an older team. There are a lot of 5th-year guys, a lot of 6th-year guys, a lot of guys whose classification is senior who are contributing on this team. So moving forward, that might be a reason for concern. But those are some of the guys, especially, looking at the 5 freshmen there, in addition to Downing that I mentioned. Those are guys who you look at as big parts of Purdue's future. What are reasonable expectations at this point? If this game against Minnesota isn't within 10 points, is the season suddenly spiraling? Well, get to a bowl game is a realistic expectation here. 2-2 is probably your worst case start. But I always frame everything in reference to the win total being 7.5. Maybe I'm just a gambling junkie. I don't know, but that's how I view it. That's what expectations were. At 2-2, it's pretty tough to go over that. It's not impossible, but you can only lose 2 games the rest of the year, and you're a 12.5-point underdog on Saturday. So that's tough. I think if you get to a bowl game, as of now on September 27th, that's not the end of the world. That I don't think it's ever easy to look at a bowl game as a bad season when you're at Purdue. In terms of keeping a game within 10 points, it all depends on how the game goes and if Aiden O'Connell plays or not. If Purdue loses by, 13 points, but it's got the ball down by 6 and, turns it over on downs, and then Minnesota hits a big play at the end of the game, well, that's a lot different than if you're down by 24 and then, score two late touchdowns to cut it to 10. I mean, the game script matters, and of course, whether Aiden O'Connell plays or not. If he doesn't play, I don't see this game being within 10 points. If he does play, I think it's a reasonable expectation that it is within 10 points. So we'll see. But it's probably early to say the season is spiraling, but it sure will feel like it if Saturday Purdue loses and it's not really a game much in the second half. It will certainly feel like it. Had a good question as well. Got a direct message. Will Devin Maccabee continue to see touches once King Doerue returns from his injury? I would think so. I think he should, and I think he will. King Doerue's still your best back on the roster, if you ask me, but I think you have to get guys some snaps that are going to be around next year, and that would be Dylan Downing, and that would be Devin Maccabee. Maccabee's been one of the best stories from this program so far. There's no doubt about that. A walk-on from Boonville, Indiana. That's a great story, but you have to like what you've seen from him so far. He runs hard. He's got a little bit of burst to him, and you like what you saw as a pass catcher as well. Brom mentioned that, his receiving ability wasn't one of his strengths. He did a nice job there last week, and, I fully suspect that moving forward, that's an area where Maccabee will put time and effort into improving, because if you can do that and become a true 3-down back, that just makes you even more versatile. Pass blocking needs to improve, but sometimes baptism by fire is kind of your best way there. Finally, why does PJ Fleck own Jeff Brom? As I mentioned earlier, it's interesting to compare the two. Both coaches started in 2017. Fleck did inherit a better situation. Brom had more success in year one. I think they both went 6-6 in year two, but that program foundation certainly paid off for Fleck. Look, the last two matchups have been tight. You'll remember the 2020 game with the pass interference on Payne Durham. Last year, Purdue outplayed Minnesota. Purdue outgained them by about $150, but they lost. So I don't know that it's a complete, PJ Fleck owns him. Now, certainly the 2019 and 2018 games weren't all that close, but, look, Fleck inherited a better situation. Fleck has had more stability on his coaching staff, and simply put, they've been the more stable program. They've been very good. They've been rock solid, and Purdue just hasn't been. Purdue's had some big moments, no doubt about it, but they just haven't had the consistency that Minnesota has had. That's an area where Purdue certainly still needs to improve. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for spending time with me. We'll be back here Sunday to put a wrap on the Minnesota game with another more instant reaction type of show before Purdue moves on to Maryland. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Come hang out, join the conversation, and tweet me your questions. Plenty of thoughts will be there throughout the game on Saturday, so come hang out. Until next time, enjoy Saturday's game and take care.